This interview is being recorded for the Oral History Project Black Student Life at Rutgers University and is being conducted by Elena Harris on December 7th in the office of Dr. Cheryl Clarke on the College Avenue campus in New Brunswick, New Jersey. This interview is being conducted by Dr. Cheryl Clarke, noted poet, Rutgers graduate, and director of the Office of Diverse Community Affairs and Gay Lesbian Concerns. Alongside us is Dr. Kim Butler, chairperson of the Africana Studies Department. The topic of this project is to see if there was a correlation between the Black movement at Rutgers and the gay lesbian movement at Rutgers, and if there was any type of unification of both these camps. This project seeks to give an historical account of Black student life at Rutgers University. Its purpose is to make the information available for academic study for future generations. This interview has the right to end at any time. Before beginning, I'd like to know if you give your permission for researchers to hear this tape.
Certainly, I will.
Do you give your permission to quote any of your statements?
Yes.
Do you give your permission to reproduce portions of your statement?
Yes.
And finally, do you give your permission to publish portions of your statement?
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Clarke, you attended Howard University as an undergraduate. When and what made you want to come to Rutgers for your graduate studies?
I attended Howard University in 1969. No, I'm sorry. Strike that. I attended Howard University 1965 to 1969. See, I'm trying to make myself young. The question was, I wanted to do graduate work because I had been an English major and I wanted to continue to study English, literature really. And Rutgers, my mother read in Ebony magazine, Rutgers, among a lot of other predominantly white institutions, were recruiting African American students, Black students at that time, into graduate programs from historically Black colleges and universities. I applied. I was accepted. So that is why I came to Rutgers. I was accepted into another graduate program. It was an MAT program. Wasn't really interested in that type of a program. I was interested in a literature program. So that's what got me to Rutgers, that they were recruiting Black students into their graduate programs and that I wanted to study literature. As you might imagine, between 1965 and 1969, Howard was an extremely politically active campus around the Black Power movement, which was the late 60s phase of what we now refer to as the Black Freedom Struggle or the Black Freedom Movement, and many times the Civil Rights Movement. So Howard was extremely politically active around issues of Black power, particularly in the area of curriculum change. Students, I would say we, if I was an activist at that time, which I was not, but students wanted more emphasis on African American life and culture, particularly in the English department, the history department, and the social sciences. So when I came to Rutgers in 1969, it was also very politically vibrant. And I dare say that, I know it's true, that the struggle students waged here at Rutgers beginning in 1968 at Rutgers Newark affected my coming to the institution because of a student's demand that the place open up and become more diverse. At that time, diversity meant Black and Latino students.
Do you think that it was easier for the students at Howard to be more towards the activist fight because it's, predominantly Black than it was for the students at Rutgers? considering, you know, they were trying to integrate the curriculum?
No, not particularly, because, well, it's hard to say whether it was harder.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps it was more difficult for black students, black and Latino students, to protest
Right.
the kind of institutional racism that occurred and is still occurring at Rutgers.
Right.
Students at Howard had to fight a different kind of thing. They had to fight that embedded sense of black respectability and that accommodationist and imitative urge that all historically black universities and colleges are shot through with to this day.
Right.
Extremely conservative socially.
Right.
So that was the kind of battle. So they were different. There were different battles.
Right. Many scholars say your poetry is inspired by civil rights, black power, anti-war, women and gay lesbian liberation movements. How valid is that statement? And if so, what attributes your poetry to those certain causes?
I think I didn't answer a previous question because I think you did ask me when I came to Rutgers, was there a connection between the black struggle and the gay struggle?
That was in the
summary.
The summary.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
gonna get to that.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Because I don't want to forget. Oh, my poetry. Well, yeah, it's definitely influenced by actually the fact that I write poetry for an audience, a public audience, is definitely influenced by the black arts movement of the 60s. Because at that time, all of us saw how words, rhetoric, whether it was in poetry, whether it was in black theater, which was very, very vibrant at that time, particularly in New York. But in Washington too, actually, which, you know, is where I was before I came here. But, you know, we saw how poetry transformed people and transformed black people, transformed our feelings about ourselves as viable contributors to life, letters, and culture. It transformed us in terms of how we began to see our history, have a more critical outlook. I have a more critical perspective regarding our history. So yes, all of those things influenced my poetry. But I didn't really begin to publish until, and take it seriously until the late 70s. So, my poetry is very influenced by that time, still is. Though, you know, I don't have, I have maybe one poem that directly references the civil rights movement.
What would that be?
That poem is called Movement.
Yeah, I have a quote from there.
Oh, okay, all right. Yeah. That's, I mean, but the forthrightness and directness about sexuality is definitely the impact of the black arts movement, directness about blackness and, blackness and black power.
Why do you think gay lesbian issues took so long to evolve at Rutgers University?
Actually, they didn't take long to evolve. Actually, Rutgers was the first post-Stonewall gay student organization was started at Rutgers on this very campus, College Avenue. Yes, the Homophile League. And it was started by an African American young man by the name of Lionel Cuffey, and he was a Rutgers College sophomore. And he founded the league, the Homophile League, in 1969. Only about 3 months after the Stonewall riots in New York. I mean, I guess you know the Stonewall. You have to go through that good. So Rutgers students were very progressive in that sense, and actually there was a lot more cohesion between the various political student groups on campus at that time. The anti-war movement, the feminist movement, or women's movement, the black movement, or the Black Power movement on campus, and gay students. And often there were protests here all the time, but those four groups would be allied in terms of what they were demanding of the institution.
Can you just briefly go over the Stonewall incident for those who may not have known what it was?
Okay, Stonewall is said to be the watershed event that ushered in the modern day gay rights movement, or gay liberation movement, or gay and lesbian liberation movement. In 1969, at the time, Stonewall occurred, gay meant very much what queer means now. It was an umbrella term for both men and women. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. We like to look back on that era now and revise it and say that bisexual and transgender people were always a part of our movement, but were closeted within the movement.
Right.
That's true and not true, whatever true means. So, but Stonewall still is a bar in the West Village, right off of 7th Avenue South. It still is there. And, it was a well-known gay bar, and I'm using gay to mean men this time. And, men, all kinds of gay men. And the police frequently raided the bar and, embarrassed the patrons, arrest or, police brutality or searching, and, roughing people up. Well, it was the last weekend of June. I know that. I don't know the specific dates, or I've forgotten.
June 27th.
Oh, goodness. You know it. June 27th. Okay. All that weekend, there was rioting in that bar, and the patrons gave the police as good as they got. And that ushered in, that was became a national call to action on the part of gay and lesbian people. And gay and lesbian people came out of the closet. And so you had, you had all kinds of, gay liberation groups that sprouted up in New York as a result of the Stonewall riots, from San Francisco to New York.
Right.
So that was Stonewall. That was before my time.
You being a student at the time of all this, what do you say was the atmosphere on campus like in regards to the gay community, considering that there was now an openly gay involvement after the Stonewall incident?
Well, I came in '69. I wasn't a lesbian yet. I met Lionel Cuffey. the, if my memory serves me correctly, which, you know, it may not, but I hope it does, the Homophile League was very visible on campus. Had a lot of activities, a lot of programs, did a lot of education in classrooms. Students were called on a lot to educate people, faculty and students. At that time, there was a great deal more affinity among students and faculty. Really was, you know. Faculty came to student organization meetings. That was particularly true of the Homophile League meetings.
Right.
Because the Homophile League was the first openly gay organization in the state of New Jersey. So a lot of people from the community came to the meetings. A lot of faculty came to the meetings. And people's anonymity was protected. That was, you know, a major thing.
Right.
There were a lot of dances, you know, monthly dances, and a lot of people came to them, men and women. So in the beginning, there was a lot of visibility. As the black student organizations became more nationalist oriented, there grew, and as the anti-war movement died, you know, like in the mid-70s, because that was sort of, to me, that was sort of a glue between the gay student organizations and the gay student organization and the African American and Latino student organizations. But as the black student organizations became more nationalistic, you know, that big homophobic divide occurred.
Right.
You know, I'd say after '73. I can remember that some of the first gay liberation front conferences were given here at Rutgers.
Right.
Oh, you have all that? Okay.
Yeah, I have all that.
I came out at one of them in 1973. But anyway, yeah.
Do you think that maybe a lot of black students that were involved in the gay lesbian movement maybe took away from that, like, you know, left that to join the black students movements?
Well, a lot of the, they were already in the black student organizations, you know. Now, they were closeted.
Right.
However, I do remember about 3 black drag queens who were very visible and famous on campus. And they went between, I mean, they were really drag queens. I mean, wigs and, you know, drag queens in the old sense. They weren't trying to be women. They were just cross-dressing. You know, they were drag queens. And, you know, they were younger than me. They were in their, you know, late teens, early 20s. And they would go between the groups and they didn't care. You know, they were like really, of course, as always, the most out people.
Right.
You know, and they were just outrageous out.
You talked before about the conferences that they held at Rutgers. In April 1975, the 5th conference that took place, So Gay airs on WRSU FM radio, and they published newsletters called the Gay Old Times. What were some other major publications at the time at Rutgers?
Gay publications?
Gay publications, yes.
The only thing I remember really actually were the newsletters. I don't know and it just could be me. I don't know of any other publication.
So the newsletters, was the
That was
only-
like monthly, and it was from, by 1975 was the homophile league called the Rutgers University Gay Alliance.
Right.
Yeah, by that time it changed. I don't know. I really don't. Actually, in 1974, I left the university for about almost 4 years. I didn't return until 78.
Right.
So a lot went on, I'm sure, during that time that I didn't know about.
It's funny you say that because in 1974 there was a synopsis on gay and lesbian education, which was presented by the Graduate School of Education.
Oh, okay.
And they had a topic on Black studies and gay liberation.
Oh, really?
Right. I guess this would be opinion based now. Do you think that the Black studies maybe should have had their own synopsis instead of trying to integrate women's studies, Black studies, and the gay lesbian studies? Do you think maybe it would have been more prevalent if they would have did their own synopsis and focused more on their own causes instead of trying to integrate these three campaigns in one? situation?
Well, I'm all for conversations across the difference.
Right.
Even then, I was for that. Because I think it's very difficult to, I mean, you can do it. You know, you can compartmentalize yourself or your interests. But I think, no. I guess my answer is no. I think that, and I've always thought that, I think that Black communities, as well as queer communities, as well as women's communities, have to be, I mean, so I'm just using those because those are the three categories we're always talking about. I think they all have to be prodded to learn and integrate ideas, activisms, and knowledges about the other groups. Because we don't, you know, we don't live just as Black people. We don't live just as gay or lesbian people. We don't live just as women.
Right.
So.
In 1976 and 1977, Deke had posted a sign outside of their. Are you familiar with that? Posted a sign
I'm
outside.
familiar with that
Yeah, outside
issue.
of their,
I wasn't here then.
outside of their fraternity house, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
Basically, downing gays, lesbians, stuff like that.
Right.
But in 1977, the Targum actually published a letter from the Dean of Students, Howard Crosby. Right, you familiar with that?
Yeah.
Just for the sake of the people who view this, I'm going to recite what he said. Rutgers College is committed in providing an atmosphere where students, faculty, and staff can exchange philosophies and share ideas without fear of harassment, retribution, or ridicule. The nature of the learning process mandates that all members of the community respect the beliefs, values, and lifestyles of others. Acts of intolerance, bigotry, or racism, for example, whether anti-Semitic, anti-Black, or anti-gay, are threats to the entire community. What would be your response to his statement in general?
Oh, I think that's great, you know, that he said that. He was a courageous man in a way. I remember I worked for him a long time ago. He was a courageous man. And I guess we can say this now, he was also a gay man. I don't guess I'll be fired for that. He was a gay man. He never came out of a gay man, but he was. And that was a very courageous thing for him to say. And Rutgers, I guess I can say this, College Avenue, has never had really a productive fraternity life here on this campus. and Deke was one of the worst offenders. And they continued to do that effigy stuff.
Right.
And eventually, I think around 79 or 80, they got thrown off campus, but not for that. For other kinds of violations. I can't remember exactly what. But they were never
reprimanded for?
Well, no, they weren't, because it was a freedom of speech kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's why he did that in the context of a letter to the editor.
Right.
And even though the fraternities and sororities were under his purview at Rutgers College, because that's where they were,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because until 72, Rutgers was all male.
Right.
That's why he did it in a letter to the editor. And that's why he did it only for Rutgers College, because you remember there was a Livingston, there was a Douglas,
Mm-hmm.
there wasn't Cook yet, and there was a University College, but it was sort of different then. So there were basically only 3 main campuses then. I mean, 3 main colleges, because Cook was called the Ag School.
Okay. You talked earlier about the name changes. From the League to the RGA, and then in 1984 it changed to Rutgers University Gay Lesbian Alliance.
Yeah.
Why were there so many changes?
Well, they changed from the Homophile League because they wanted it to be, they changed the name from the Homophile League because they wanted it to be more representative of men and women,
Mm-hmm.
even though it was always mostly men,
Mm-hmm.
because this campus is a very male campus, which
Right.
is still.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then when they changed it to Lesbian Gay Alliance, they wanted to acknowledge lesbians, because at that time women were rejecting gay. They felt that, well, I should say we, because I was one of them, we felt that our identities were being subsumed in gay, because mostly when you said gay, people thought of men. So that term came to define men, gay. So that's why they put lesbian in there.
In 1985, attendance decreased greatly in these organizations. Some believe it was because of Reagan was in office. What was the gay community's reaction to Reagan being in office at the time here at Rutgers?
What was everybody's reaction? Well, I came back like at around 1980. I came back in 78 as a social work student. What was everybody's reaction to Reagan? I guess gay communities were a little quieter. And I remember going to the president of, because I had been hired to develop so-called minority programs in the Dean of Students Office at Rutgers College around 1980. Mm-hmm. And I reached out to, what was it at that time, Rulgaba or something, Rulga, and talked to the president, and he said, "Oh, this is the first time anybody has ever reached out to our organization. Thank you." Mm-hmm. So, I began to do. So I guess that was a reaction to
Reagan.
the Reagan administration. I guess.
Since we're running out of time, I'm gonna end with a quote from your poem Movement. Mm-hmm. You wrote, "Though I was never treated cruelly, I saw dastardly things done to others for the slightest lack of measure." Was this statement geared to your life as a poet, or that in your gay lesbian activism?
Oh, actually, that little piece was supposed to be reflective of slavery, actually, and the kind of harsh measures taken with slaves
Okay.
for the slightest lack of measure. And if we can just even remember some of the stuff Frederick Douglass told us,
Right.
as one example. So that's what that was, but it was a way of saying that the black freedom struggle, one of its richest sources is slavery. The way is the history of slavery.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what that was about. I didn't think about it in reference to myself as a gay person, but that's a very good interpretation.
Is there anything you would like to add before we conclude this interview?
Oh, just to say I've had a great time, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my reminiscences of Rutgers.
Well, I just want to say thank you, and this concludes take 2 of the Oral History Project, Black Student Life at Rutgers. Thank you.